Thank you. Hello again. My name is Abiodun Durojaye. That's Abiodun. It has not always been easy to stand in such capacity and introduce myself by my name, like my actual real name. It is only now, as an adult, that I am able to do so and that I understand the importance of helping people to pronounce my name. I was born in Lagos, Nigeria, but my family and I moved here when I was about 9 years old. One of my fondest memories is starting elementary school. I remember walking into the building with my parents, signing the sign-in sheet, and we went and have our seats. The receptionist comes out a couple moments later. She looks down at the sign-in sheet. She looks into the crowd. She looks at the sign-in sheet. She looks into the crowd and says, "Oh, I am going to have a difficult time with this name. Abdomen?" I had never heard abdomen before. My parents grabbed my hand and we walked to the front. She apologized and said, "I am so sorry. That is a very difficult name." Then she asked a question that would change the trajectory of my life. "Do you have a nickname for her?" And without a second thought, my father said, "Abi." I had never heard him call me that before, but on that day, as I registered for the 4th grade, I became Abby, which later turned to Abby. When we arrived home, my father let me know that names, going by Abby, would make things a lot less complicated for me. I didn't know what he meant then, but 25 years later, I went by Abby. You see, don't get me wrong, nicknames can be great. They can be a term of endearment amongst family, fun inside jokes with friends. They can even make life easier when you go order your caramel macchiato at Starbucks and they ask that question, "What is the name for your order?" But I went by a nickname that I couldn't relate with, I didn't get to choose it, and quite frankly, it just wasn't me. You see, for a lot of ethnic names, this is how our name evolves. I work in youth development, predominantly with youth of color, and often I hear adults tell youth, "Go into that job, tell them who you are, be your authentic self." As someone who works closely with this youth and someone who's walked in similar shoes, I am here to tell you that authenticity is a privilege, and not all of us have the privilege of walking into a room and introducing ourselves by our real names. But is that such a bad thing? What's in a name after all, as Shakespeare said? As it turns out, a lot. Names are powerful. They're the first indicator of who a person is. Names often tell you about a person's gender, their religion, their culture, and in some cultures, names have a significant tie to a person's destiny in life. The selection of names are often more than likes and dislikes, especially in countries in Africa. So Abiodun means born during a festive period. Whereas Abby, it's a nice name, but it didn't mean anything to me. When it comes to selecting names and ethnic names, my doctoral dissertation is on this notion that ethnic names and being called by your ethnic name creates a sense of validation. The research that I conducted generated a couple themes, and one of those themes says when immigrants are called by their actual name, it creates a sense of validation. However, when people in the dominant group mispronounce or do not call immigrants by those names, it creates a sense of void and shame, which in turn makes the immigrants ashamed of their own name. So it is important that, we pronounce these names accordingly. By pronouncing the names correctly, it not only helps restore pride, it does create a sense of validation. Of course, integration into the society is beneficial for both the immigrant and the society. but total assimilation can cause significant cultural loss for the immigrated person. There's a strong connection between identity and name. What if I told you that people who change their name also change or alter their identity, even if in that given moment? And names and identity go way beyond the immigrant population. There are names that are culturally out of place or different. I used to know a boy named Ashley growing up. Ashley was teased and ridiculed for his name. By the time we got to about high school age, he started going by Lee. Often when I have this conversation around names, I think about Ashley, and I wonder if he ever did find himself in his name, or if Lee lives on. Now, you may be wondering, if names are indeed this powerful, why do immigrants change their names? Why do people like Lee get a new name in hopes of social integration? Why do people with culturally different sounding names use nicknames at Starbucks? How many people actually use their real names at Starbucks? Okay, well, for those of us that don't, think about your why. I used to think that my why was because my name was too difficult. And I understand that my why is because I didn't want to bring shame to the person pronouncing my name. And let's not forget, it goes both ways. Immigrants also struggle with dominant culture names. The difference is they are expected to try. English, I will tell you, is a very difficult language, especially for people who migrate here at a later age, like my mother. I had a friend growing up named Ryan. Ryan was a girl, another unusual name pairing giving gender norms. Ryan, spelled R-Y-A-N, was very difficult for my mother to pronounce, and she kept pronouncing her Rain. It was not for lack of effort, but because that R-Y combination was very difficult for her to say. It took years of practice and intentionality for my mother to be able to say Ryan. Going back to the day that I adopted Abby, I think about what my parents could have done differently. I think about what the receptionist could have done differently. Could my parents have helped her pronounce my name? Could they have accepted the mispronunciation as Ryan did for many years? Could the receptionist have asked how you pronounce my name? Could she have also understood that there was a power dynamic at play? When it comes to opportunity and power, people who don't have opportunity and power are at their mercy. If we go back in time, my parents would have probably did the same thing, because for them, a name was not going to stop their daughter from getting into school. So I want to share some tricks with you, things that I do when I see names that I am unfamiliar with, because I still struggle with names that I am unfamiliar with. One, I always recognize my bias. I am very aware that names mean something to someone. I am very mindful about pronunciation, and I ask how to pronounce a person's name. Here's what I think you can do. You can also work on your biases and realize that not every name has a look. You can ask for how to pronounce a name. You can begin to do your work. You can be mindful of your facial expression. Here's what we can do. As parents, as employers, as employees, as friends, as colleagues, we can begin to do our work. We can ask how names are to be pronounced. We can be very mindful of how we look when we see an unfamiliar name on a piece of paper. I think that if we begin to do this, we move closer to our end goal. Think about your name. Are you privileged with a culturally acceptable name? Maybe a simpler or easy name? Now think about those of us that don't. Think about what happens if you didn't. Think about the work that needs to be done for the collective us to be better. So now that I've shared a little bit about what I do, what you could do, what we could do, I think it's important to be very mindful of it and be conscious of it. Think about names often. Names are these things that, if it doesn't impact you, you probably don't think about often. But I'm hopeful that after this conversation, we can begin to see the power behind a name and keep it at the forefront. I know that I will do my part. I know that I will continue to work to build a more inclusive culture. And I also want to challenge those of us with difficult names or culturally unacceptable names. Tell people what your name is. Maybe they can say it. Maybe they can't, but will actually try. Look, I know it's difficult. I've been there. I lived it. I know what it means when your name stops you from the opportunity of a lifetime. I know what it feels like when your name prevents you from that job. But I think if we all agree to do the work, we can move in a better direction. I ask you to challenge the status quo. I know that I will do my part. The question is, will you? Thank you.